Told you the main people that's dealing with her are going to be Boule, Jack and Jill, those type of sellout black people for fraternities, sororities, these type of so-called black people that work to keep the status quo exactly the way it is. They're always going to be the ones to support her because that's why she was sent there. So whether she does anything for original people or not, they really don't. They'd rather she didn't. They'd rather she didn't do anything because that allows them to perpetuate the fake slave narrative. And they would rather her continue to talk about what she's not going to do for black people and how she's so black. But then everything around her, all the people in her cipher and all of that, none of them are that. She don't have no children, so she's not. That's why she can have abortion clinics, people getting free abortions at the Democratic convention. Like, this is what y'all doing. This is what y'all supporting. This is what y'all supporting. Y'all support a place where they offering free vasectomies and free abortions. This is what it means to be a woman then. And so this is why, all of the TV shows they've made about her or a woman like her coming into position and all of that is going to be worse. Sarah Palin would have been better than this chick. But they're going to do what they're going to do. Hopefully the real majority, which it looks like it's not, the real majority ain't going to let it happen again. So like I said, there's nothing she can say because she's been in there for the past 4 years messing everything up. So now you're going to tell me what you're going to do when you go back into the same job in a higher position? No. But like I said, the people who are going to support it are going to be the same people who support white supremacy the most in this country, which are the people who identify with the slave brand, and that's mostly people in them HSBCUs and all of that, who cry racism and cry white supremacy and shit, but they be the first one to marry a Caucasian woman, marry a Caucasian man, use their Freemason connections and whatever else they need to use to keep the thing exactly the way it is. And I've yet to see anything that challenges that at this stage. Like, they literally just tried to kill one of their own presidents again in our lifetime. You understand? And they desensitize people so much to that fact that they act like it didn't happen. Her father and them went to India into Jamaica after having to get kicked out of India for all of the slave shit they was doing. So he's Jamaican in name only. Like, she was raised by her Indian mother. She got HSBCU when she came to America the same way Barack did. Barack was raised by white astronauts and CIA intelligence assets. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? Like, this is what you're dealing with. And they make these fake light-skinned so-called people of color, BIPOC people, so black, but then when it comes to you, they just can't stand it. They can't stand black, but they the first ones to big it up when they need it. Oh, as well as the communist gay liberals and the Muslim fundamentalists. They'll be the ones to support her. But let these black people do it. Let these black people go down in history voting for this bitch the same way that they did before. Let them do it. Let them do it, man. Let them do it and see what happens. All to spite black men. All to spite having a father in the house. That's what this is all about. giving women the chance to destroy the world. Men been destroying it for too long. Now it's our chance to show them how to do it. Yeah, she did that show with Mindy Kaling, in which she was proud to say how South Asian she is. Mindy Kaling, brother, screwed mad so-called black men and black females out of scholarship because he wanted to play that he was black. He was going to play being black in order to get the scholarship. Said he was so-called African American, right? These niggas will be black to get money. You know what I'm saying? Just like black people won't be black to get money. You understand? It goes both ways. And remember, black, white, all of these are status clusters. These have nothing to do with the skin color of the people we talk about. This is just the caste system that they've allowed to go in based upon how they were integrated into the British colonial system. You know what I'm saying? Like, this nigga was quick to say how he was black and all of this to get a job and shit. But how many black people allegedly did he box out of that position just by taking it? Black people who can't go in some place and say, yo, I'm zero. I'm, can't go to no Indian place and be like, yo, I'm Indian. Sign me up. You can't go to no Chinese place talking about, yo, I'm Chinese. You know what I'm saying? Sign me up. But these Chinese niggas can come into black so-called melanated spaces. Everybody can come into melanated spaces to the point where they done made breakdancing a Olympic sport. You understand? And I remember cops literally chasing us off the block, grabbing the linoleum, cutting it up, cutting up the cardboard. You know what I'm saying? Like literally beating niggas down for breakdancing. Now you got white women named Ray Gun that can just go out here and make utter fools of themselves in the art form that like literally people I know literally went to jail for. You understand? Died for. You understand? However, there's no hip hop hall of fame. All of these so-called black billionaires, these niggas ain't shit. They not trying to do nothing for nobody. They are vested in the same system. Well, that's why they constantly showing entertainers trying to back up what they trying to do. They don't get nobody or no real academicians. You know what I'm saying? People who have common sense, people who are really educated outside of the echo chamber of the American so-called politically uh, dumbed down educational system. They not gonna bring nobody in that's a real political analyst that'll tell people, oh no, there's a difference between a democracy and a republic, and that anybody saying that this is a democracy is actually really a communist or a socialist that's trying to erode this whole society, so that way they can come in and make it just as shitty as the place that they came from. Also, they can find another society where it hasn't happened yet, and then do the same type of shit. They already showed and proved how this bitch Kamala locked all of these men up. All of these melanated men and women up all of these years, conspired with the state to keep people locked up so that way they can keep doing slave labor. But because she's melanated, because I want to see somebody that look like me, that's what's most important. And that's what's the scariest thing. And that's what I think people really don't like about so-called people who identify with being black. That's what I think the most thing is. The fact that they're so ultra willing to go against their own. That's what makes them deplorable to other so-called races of people, I think. Is how quick they are to throw their own people under the bus. Like how quick they are to give up what they have just so somebody that don't look like them can take what they have. Like think about how happy melanated people are whenever they see like white people doing something black, like rapping good or dancing or some bullshit like that. They get so happy. They get so amped to see that happen, you know? And I don't see that trait exhibited in any other race or any other so-called people who identify with having a race. I don't see them be doing that. That's that we sick boss mentality shit. It's like, it's really sickening. It's like, how long are you going to continuously go against your own to appease people that don't even like you, that just want to take what you create, claim it for themselves, do it in front of you, and get you to say that you do it better than that they do it, what you created better than you do it. Who is the creator? That's the main thing. That's the wanton aspect of melanated people that I think that discuss everybody, including melanated people, the most about themselves. Is how quick they are to just brown nose and just say or do anything. I was watching this dude, this gang dude was talking about interviewing him about gangs and shit. No, this nigga YSL Woody, the one who basically just destroyed the whole state's case against Young Thug. This nigga, yo, he is a wealth of comedy and and information on the degenerative aspect of the legal establishment. You know, if ever there was an example of what institutionalism does to the mind of a young so-called melanated man, it would definitely be him. He would definitely be a study. Like, he gonna go down being more famous than Young Thug. But I was watching an interview with him, and he was talking about how he was talking to this Mexican, and the Mexican, he asked the Mexican, well, why y'all don't like black people like that? He said, because y'all just, nobody could trust y'all because y'all just was so quick to throw each other under the bus. And he said after that, we went and we was chilling and we was watching new people coming into the yard and shit that was just coming off the bus and all that. He was like, the funny thing is when you see it, he said, all I saw was the white boys. They would come, they would welcome the dude, bring him in. The Mexicans would do that. The Asians would do that. But the black people, as soon as the niggas get off, they looking and trying to see how they can fucking, who was going to rough him up, who was going to take what he had. You see what I'm saying? And that's what made me think, like, yeah, that's probably what it is the most. It's the reality that we may never see our own people unified in any really significant way in our lifetime, and that we'll probably leave to here, and our people will still be in the situation that they in. That's the most frustrating. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. He said he'll be on a lecture tour when he get out. Exactly. I think segregation in a lot of instances was the way to go, at least until uh, brothers and sisters had their own societal norms paved out and how, the structure of, or the infrastructure of the society was going to go. Because we had it. Remember, we was running everything up until the mid and late 1800s, man. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we was literally running the entire country. We had our own oil wells and oil fields and watermelon industries and all of these things, you know what I'm saying, that did and have existed, that these whites were just able to come and just integrate themselves into due to our people's own necessity or need to uh to be put under something or someone. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about how bad Vietnam was. I mean, we can only imagine it based upon, because us that was born in the 70s grew up in the 80s. became young adults in the 90s, and then older adults like in the 2000s and stuff. Like we remember, we came in at the end of that. Like when they start making movies about certain shit, you know that time has already passed. So we came at the end of the Vietnam era movies. You know what I'm saying? We came with the Deer Hunter, and you know what I'm saying? And all that type of shit. Deer Hunter, and Platoon, you know what I mean? The Thin Red Line, all of that stuff. We came in under all of that. All of that Vietnam era shit. Born on the 4th of July, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Hamburger Hill, all that shit, right? So we grew up under all of that, understanding how bad the Nam was, as well as all of our uncles and them that came back all messed up. You know what I'm saying? All messed up and turned out, you know what I mean, from the whole ordeal. You know what I mean? We saw it in movies like Dead Presidents and shit like that. But the generation before them now, they all of their movies and stuff is about the Great War. You know what I'm saying? World War II and all of that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So just like in our era when we started growing up in the post crack era, you know what I'm saying? When they started making movies like New Jack City and Strapped and all of this type of shit, you see, like we had already passed all of that. They was already looking towards opium and shit. Like by the time like the last crack movies and shit, they was already on to opium and all the other shit they was gonna bring over here. Just like when they started showing us all of the what do you call that? All of those Italian mob movies, right? When they were showing us The Godfather and you could say Scarface, but he wasn't really guy. He wasn't really Italian, but you get the point. Godfather, Goodfellas, um, The Pope of Greenwich Village, all of these types of WAP movies that came out like that back in the days. That's because they had already decided they was gonna phase out the Italian mob in America like that and hand everything over to the Russian mob and the Mexican cartels and all of that. You see what I'm saying? So once they know that they're gonna replace you, that's when they start coming up with all of these different types of movies and shit that kind of like move you into a certain aspect of the global populace, global consciousness per se. And so everything becomes inverted. You know what I mean? In terms of how we see ourselves and how we're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Supporting one another because the true goal of communism is the ultimate nihilistic destruction of a society from within by the very same people who are descended from those people who set up the society. You know what I'm saying? Communism is like cancer. Capitalism can be cancer if they use communist means to establish it. You see what I'm saying? But capitalism itself, if you hate on that, then you're hating on how your ancestors made bread because your ancestors were not beggars. Okay, your ancestors created entire monetary systems that are still used today. Your ancestors was about moving and creating means of production that would allow them to have a greater sway over what eventually would become economies. You know what I'm saying? So your ancestors was not into being broke. It was not brokies the way that they want to make us think that they was. Another reason why they want to associate you and I with so many other places in the world is so that way we don't actually take advantage of the stuff that's already here for us to do so. i.e., because this is the country of our origin, most of our estate money and estate shit or whatever is going to be here. So naturally, they want us to identify with another place so that way we don't ever claim any of the estate value or things that we have for us that's right here. And that's the biggest problem. We don't understand. We're not looking for the forest for the trees. They didn't just create this whole thing just because they, let's say, hated black people. No, because the people who initiated and helped them do it were technically black people, but they weren't black in the context of their complexion. They were based upon their conceptual understanding of status. And so they wanted to create a place where the status could be flipped on you. You see what I'm saying? So that way your man would want to procreate with their woman and their woman would want to create with your man. You see? Like the painting on the left in this picture that you will see here is allegedly a painting that is gifted to certain high members of the so-called KKK when they get to a certain level. Because the biggest supporter, again, of white supremacy, the way that they understand it, is the female. Because it's through the female that they can cooperate and get her to create more of them, especially if she sees no value in you. You understand? So this is not to say all melanated females, but but all of the melanated females that's coming out against Kamala, if you notice, they all dark skinned. Have you peeped that? Have y'all peeped that? Look at everybody that's cooking Kamala right now. These are phenotypically melanated people. Where you look at them, you're not wondering what they are. Like, oh, is she mixed? No, that's a melanated woman. And they cooking them, and they cooking her. Are they supremacists? Do they hate? What's up with that? How come nobody going at them? They acting like them sisters is not even here. You know what I'm saying? Like they acting like them sisters is not even, like what they saying is not even valid. Because the media, the TV is only going to promote that aspect of what they're saying. So of course they're going to say that she's doing the best, especially when she's doing the worst. What else they going to do? They got to do that. Because they don't like women. Kamala don't even like bitches. She don't even like women. She don't like being a woman. She's never been pregnant. All she's done is sleep with other married women's husbands. That's all she's ever done to come up. Her husband now pulled the Schwarzenegger and cheated on his wife, his first wife, with the nanny. This bitch stayed with niggas. Montel Williams, the nigga she was with. Same thing. She stayed with niggas who cheat on their wives and all of that. And then this is who we supposed to respect. This is who we supposed to say, oh, that's a black girl like me. This is who y'all want black women to be like. This the type of black woman y'all going big up. So you going the type of bitch that need Megan Thee Stallion to endorse her. Can you imagine if you was friends with a shorty and for you to know that she got good character, she bring Meg Thee Stallion out to vouch for her? Can you imagine how sad that would be? How sad your life would really be if you got to bring Meg Thee Stallion out to be a character witness for yourself? Like, come on, B. Like, y'all desperate. Y'all are desperate. Desperate. You understand? To go this low, where you gonna just pull out this card. Like, okay, cool. So it really don't matter. All that matters is what color of skin this person is in. That's all that matters. But guess what? Our people wasn't on that. Our people wasn't on that. It was about the strength and the merit of your character, because we all was melanated. We all was coming from hierarchies and monarchies and shit like that. We all was coming from a universal trust where we had whatever we had dominion wise. It wasn't about what color, so we was all just varying shades of the same color, like we are now. So it couldn't have been on that. So all of this racism shit and all this color shit started with these things that came after us. You understand? Because melanated people, especially through the female, will always go against their own proper intention. Like when they was destroying the image of the so-called melanated original man, we was trying to tell young brothers and you know, they shouldn't be on it like that. That there's more to them than just the stereotype or whatever that they're dealing with. But you're dealing with a whole political substrata where all they do is identify with the stereotype. They don't identify with nothing else. You understand? So all they can do is do what they've been doing, which is lying. Because the original man is the check and balance of the old world. He represents that which was in style, which was ruling. So they got to get away with that. And he didn't base it on his color because his color was the basis. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't the basis of just who he was. It was the basis of what he represented. And so they needed to make that criminal. So that way when we look at it from a criminal perspective. So regardless to what happens, the so-called melanated female who is being used as, like we said, as the crux now to move this thing forward, while the Caucasian woman is now literally taking her place, but she is trying to have the darkest babies and the blackest nigga babies as possible. This is what she's doing, whereas the melanated woman is doing the opposite. She's trying to convince herself that she shouldn't procreate with the one that everybody in the world wants to procreate with, and that's the original man. Why else would the Japanese government be offering $75,000 a pop per baby for original men from so-called America? Why is Poland doing it now? Why is Italy starting to get in on it? Like, look, y'all probably seen this coat of arms before, right? You've seen it before, most likely. And what it says in Latin, right? Well, it says ne crede colire or colori, right? Now crede, right, or crede, right? It could also be said as nibium or nimium ne crede colore, which would mean do not believe or don't believe too much in color. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm saying with the whole thing. When you say this person is color struck or this person is caught up in what color this other person is, remember that when they speak of color, they're not talking about it from the perspective of like your skin. They're always talking about it. I mean, the layman people will be talking about skin color, but the most part, when you're dealing with anybody in the know, anybody know law, when they are speaking of the color in that way, they're speaking from the perspective of the law and how the transplant had taken place from them being black, which is pale, which is outside of the light, right? To them now becoming white based upon skin color, but then allowing the skin color to be plastered or quasi identifiable aspect to their status. When that only happened maybe about 150 years ago. Let's say from 1681. And the people who created the whole white thing to do this, to work against what at the time they were calling the Bacon's Rebellion, they were melanated. The first time the term white comes in is in Barbados when the European Bajans, which are the dark black nobility Bajans from Europe, want to make a delineation between them and the so-called indigenous melanated Bajans that was already there. And so that's when they started calling themselves white as a designation. And then it was adopted, like I said, by people in the Virginia Company because they needed to quell the beef or the alliance that was rising between the so-called poor whites and the so-called poor melanatids, who were now starting to work together against the interest of the people they called the planters, who themselves were a giant rich white oligarchy. Excuse me, who themselves were a rich black nobility, white status oligarchy. So they used to put stuff like that in their coats of arms, so that way they wouldn't get caught up in what the color system that they were bringing about in the world was or is. You know what I'm saying? So when you're seeing these images of these, like I said, these coats of arms or these types of coats of arms, you're dealing with so-called white people or people who identify with being white. However, that again, which started in 1681, you see what I'm saying? That was still them striving to adopt an aspect of the culture that they, even though they were melanated, were foreign to, because they were raised in what we would consider European culture. Because they themselves are the original West Asians, or the original so-called Europeans. This is them. But the them is us. And there was so many of them coming over here to escape the status and the laws and shit that they set up for themselves over there. That's the irony. They set all of that shit up for them. Yes, the colorable law. That's why everybody in a law, in a society that deals with colorable law, has to identify or be identified by a color, because it's part of the racial admixture of it. So different cultures have different political maladies that are instituted into the society to keep the ruling people in power. So in old Europe, old Britain, right? It was caste. It was a class. Excuse me. It was a class system. Classist. You know what I'm saying? Whereas in Indus, right? In the Indus, or what they call India, it's a caste system. CASTE system, not a CLASS class system. You see? But then in South Africa, it'll be based on race. You see what I'm saying? It'll be race and caste, because in order to be not considered black out there, you want to be perceived as colored. See, because the colored people over there are technically the original people, the people that was there before the Zulus, before the so-called Boers or Dutch or whoever else that came in. You see what I'm saying? So being colored over there is like saying that you are indigenous to the land. You understand? But that sounds crazy to us because we know colored over here means in a way you're indigenous to the land, but it was one of the letters, one of the statuses that they removed to move you further away from the original. All of that started with the passing of the crown from Atahualpa, right? Excuse me, Atahualpa, when he, as the last so-called Incan emperor, handed it over to Charles V, aka Carlos Quintus, which then transferred the European monarchy from Europa all the way here to the original throne, sun throne down in the capital of the empire at the time. And that was such a drastic change, as you can see right here. You can just see in the picture that him bringing the Christianity cross thing is coming down. That's going to switch the whole thing from that, even the crown. But if you look at the skin color, they the same color. They the same. But customarily, by the look of their dress, you can see they're of two different, distinct, right, nationalities. And that's the issue. That's what we don't really get. We've been so inundated with the idea of white people being the ones that control and have done everything, that when you really show original people that these white people you speaking of that did all of the stuff that put you or them in position now is not the same ones we dealing with, they think you're crazy. When it's really, like I said, nimium ne crede colori. Do not believe too much in the color, because that's what also got our people messed up. We was thinking that these niggas was rocking for us, rocking with us the same way we was rocking with them because we was the same color. And look where that got us. Look what happened. We can't trust each other today behind that. Where do you think this snitching, this whole thing came from? It started with niggas snitching on each other against, for, and by each other. To the point they snitched so much and betrayed each other so much that some of them decided to create orders. Imagine you being betrayed by people that look like you so much that you go and you train Sasquatches, basically. You go and you train like gorillas. You know what I mean? You train them to be able to handle your affairs and handle your shit, because there's nobody that look like you that you feel that you could trust to move it on. So you purposely go out there, you purposely go try to enslave certain other people who don't look like you and force them into your way of thinking so much that you try to create loyalty out of this trauma in them, which is basically training them to hate you, right? And then hoping that they will eventually take over and be able to protect what it is that you've created, that you use to enslave them, to keep other people that look like you from coming and taking that. That's what we dealing with. You understand? These three books are real good in illustrating more what I'm talking about. Yes, this is why they feel with that with more, because like I said, the Moorish situation comes in to such a degree that they literally wiped it from your collective memory. You understand? Think about that. They literally wiped you being, or what you would perceive as, the Moorish Empire, the vast Moorish Empire that spanned almost the entire world, where people that looked like you were running entire empires, where they never even had seen a slave, never even seen a white man, but they owned them. They made bread and shit off of them, right? To go from having all of that grandeur and majesty all over the world to, within 10 to 25 years, nobody even using the term Moor again. Because that's what happened. That's literally what happened. That's why when we started finding out about it again, they got so upset. Like I said, when I first started with this stuff, they was literally coming out and trying to say that the Moors was all Caucasian people. And then we beat the hell out of them with that. Well, me speaking, I beat that fake analogy to death so much that eventually they had to switch it up. It was like, okay, well, they were melanated, right? And they were white because of their caste, but they was only really in Africa, in Spain. And then we beat that up for a couple of years, and then they got to go back and revamp that. Well, okay, they wasn't only just in Africa, in Spain. They was in America, but they wasn't really from here. The Indians was here before them, and we beat that up, right? And we beat that up. Then it was like, oh well, they were here, and yes, the Indian so-called tribes they actually were Moors as well, but you know, um, they weren't black. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I can agree with you in that they weren't black in the context of the status. No, no, but if you're trying to tell me that every melanated person in the United States looks the way that they look because their ancestors was imported over here by people who could not read or write, who could not navigate and cook their food properly. You mean to tell me that them people is the ones that put us in this position, and that me saying I'm a Moor is somehow taking me away from me also being from and 2 foot on the land as a natural born so-called Amorucan or so-called I'm American? No. It has recently been contended by some of the most eminent of geologists that North America was the first of the continents. In the Canadian Geological Surveys, the earliest sedimentary rocks were found in the Laurentian Mountains, right? The Laurentian is another name for saying the Moors. The Laurentines. Sometimes you see old ancient maps of Atlantis and they'll have shit like that says Laurentine or Laurentinia. Same people. The Laurentian Mountains, and as older rocks have been found anywhere, America was pronounced the firstborn of the continents. Louis Agassiz, in speaking of America as the oldest of the continents, grew eloquently and expressed himself in his geological sketches, volume 1, page 1, paragraph 1, following language, firstborn among the continents, though so much later in the culture of the civilization than some of the most recent birth, America, so far as her physical history is concerned, has been falsely denominated in the New World. See? 1503. This is from the book Time Walker. 1503. The monk Thomas de Tacramanda is made head of these courts. Hundreds and millions of people are either beheaded, burnt at the stake, hung for knowing about the Arab languages, the Moorish Empire, and the treaties with the Indians. See? 1503-1506, the Vatican is satisfied that knowledge to the old Moorish Empire is no longer known by the civilized European nations. Galliano della Rovere becomes Pope Julius II. Abdullah Ez-Zaghal has been executed, so the existence of the signed treaties with the so-called Indians in the Americas does not exist. The monk Thomas de Carmenda is dead. Queen Isabella will die of unknown causes in 1504, as will Christopher Colon die in the same year of the same causes in 1506, which he knew he would. Rome's Vatican Pope Julius II, aka Giuliano della Rovere, right, who was a Medici, who was a Borgia, excuse me, sent the young Italian military and religious leader Caesar Borgia to the Indian lands to get all of the trade agreements and the treaties that Ez-Zaghal, who was the king of Granada at the time, signed with the so-called Indians, i.e. those Moors who were not dealing with the direct international trade. Young Borgia returns later and gives the requested documents to Pope Julius II, but it is rumored that 6 of these Indian documents have been seen in Europe. It is these same documents that the modern antiquists have tried to make the world believe there was some kind of American Indian religious writings. Young Caesar Borgia believes he is about to be murdered for possessing these documents, so he secretly passes them to his younger sister, Lucrezia Borgia. Caesar Borgia dies at the age of 31. Then that's when they took his image and started to create the image of Jesus, right? Pope Julius II has little luck in trying to prove the rumors are true or false, and so he is relieved from his office by dying. The same year, Giovanni de' Medici becomes Pope Leo X. He picks up the rumor that is stated to contain the signature of Abdul-Zaghal when he was the king of Spain that ended in 1491. If such documents do exist, they must be found before any confrontation can take place against the so-called Indians, i.e. the Moors of North, Central, and South America. Meanwhile, Maiden Borgia has these much sought after documents in fear for her life. Finally meets and talks with the relative who has become a monk in the Roman Catholic Church in Rome. The agreement is reached in which Maiden Borgia will turn over the Indian documents to the monk in exchange for her life. The monk has Maiden Borgia arrested, then takes the documents to Pope Leo X, and now has the Maiden Borgia put to death. So you understand, between 1491 and 1509, everybody that was down with the original taking over and the original vanquishment and the original breaking up on the selling of the kingdoms of Granada, they was all dead. They got rid of all of them within them 10 years. And you see within that time, the so-called church, Catholic Church, winds up making it so that way they done made people forget that the actual Moorish Empire as they understood it even existed. Because at one point they would speak of the Moors in general as Moors or Moroccans or Mohammedans. Then after a certain point, they started referring to them in different names like Gaetulians or Portuguese, or you see what I'm saying? But prior to all of that, all of those West Asian Moors, the so-called black nobility Moors from West Asia, aka Europa, were all considered Romans. And they weren't countries the way that we understood them now. They were basically being run by whatever Moorish factions, amalgamated Moorish factions, were still holding power. So they literally had kill orders to make people forget, to stop us from even using the term that we have to identify ourselves as that. And these things are being instilled on you. Got people in your own family that's informing on you. Oh, he said he a Moor. Let me go tell the inquisitors. And then the inquisitors at your crib, and then they killing you. They burning you at the stake because you're not trying to eat no pork. And it was your uncle, it was your cousin that sold you out. These are the unspoken travesties that came from all of those years of inquisition, all of those years of persecution. You understand? It made niggas not be able to trust each other. Which is what we suffering from today, right? That's exactly what we're dealing with today. Yeah, yeah. Loyola and the Moor, exactly. That's a reference going back to the story of Ignatius Loyola when he was on one of his sabbaticals. He's the nigga who started the Society of Jesus to kill all the Moors. And he was on his horse and he passed this Moor. This Moor, didn't really think nothing of him. And at the process of that, he was so vexed by the Moor having such a nonchalant attitude about him or whatever he believed that a fierce jealousy, he said a fierce jealousy just dawned up in him, bubbled up in him, and made him realize that he just needed to do what he needed to do to get rid of the Moors who were too proud and free to be walking upon the earth unmolested. This is what he said. This is how vexed we make Moors. Like I said, the Moorophobia is real. This is how vexed Moors make people. Because when you really in the zone and you really on your Quan or your Dean like that, as a Moorish American, like nothing that they talking about, whatever, is going to throw me off for what I know to be true, or what I know to be Dean. So all this other shit you talking about is just more stuff to distract me for what I know I need to be doing. Other blacks and these type of people, they don't have that national fervor within them. Because what they believe is coming from an aspect of something that can't be proven. Remember, they want you to be a Muslim because then that functions along the line of belief. So nothing really has to be proven. Nothing really doesn't have to really be annexed and put under the aspect of an absolute truth. You understand? It can always be kind of like used, manipulated, because what you believe in is shit you don't know. But once you know it, you cease to believe it. You cease to believe in it because you know it. Yeah, just like they say certain infernal entities can smell Christian blood. Like they smell the Moorish stench on you. The no slave advocacy stench. You don't have it. So that's a problem. Yeah, and then the blacks, like I said, half of these blacks genetically are not even what they saying they are. Half of them not even from here like that. They just think they are because this is what they've claimed. You know what I'm saying? But there's a reason why they always use British niggas to play you in movies. Or they might use melanated men or women to play you in other things. Or allow you as a melanated man from America to play an African, like what they did with Black Panther. But they don't want everybody playing who and what they are. So when you speak of Europeans, these are the people that you're talking about. When I said the Europeans was throwing the people into slavery, the bondage, these are the Europeans that was throwing the Slovaks, the Slovenians, the Circassians, right? This is the ones that was throwing them in bondage. These are the ones that was coming over here trying to take your space, adopt your names, marry into your families, to get away from laws and situations that they started over there that spilled back over here. because all of them originally came from over here. So of course, after the persecution, they're going to go back to from whence they came. And they trace their ancestors to be from over here. So at some point, there was a unification where both sides of the family agreed to marry back into each other around the time of the Crusades, in which you had now the predominant ones from Islam and the predominant ones from the Order of Islam, and then those from the Order of Christ began to work together, marry back into each other's families, and that's where you start to see these types of coats of arms. Because you had the Islamic, the Moorish, let's say Islamic type, and then the Moorish Christian type. But as you see, they still of the same people. But culturally, societally, they're different. But the coats of arms was basically like also like little mini peace treaties that would allow a new family or a new contender or a new ally to be able to see the arms and read it and to know exactly from which line you're coming from. You understand? Whenever you see them with the white headband on, right? That's them saying that they are that the line that started this family is Hebrew. Like when you see them with the white joint on the Corsican flag, they let you know that was set up by the Hebrew line of Moors. But we know that the Hebrews got what they got from the Canaanite Moabites. So when you're saying Hebrew, you're basically saying Moabite or Carthaginian or Numidian. See, he's holding the flag and the shield of St. George, the Moor, the melanated man from the house, right? See that right here? He at the top, he at the bottom here, he at the top above the knight's head, right? Then over here, what you got? You got the white chick, white Circassian slave, raised up, let out of the dungeon to become this nigga's wife so he can create some light skinned people that he could feel he could leave his parts of his estate to. See how crazy these niggas was? Yeah, create a whole race of beige people. So it became such that they started to tell niggas not to focus so much on the color, and literally was putting that into the coat of arms. So when you thinking about the origins of this problem of this hate, this is where all this shit is coming from. This is the problem. 1 second. Yeah, because a lot of them also would use signs that were connected to the original um, so-called clans or tribes that had their own images or symbols, and then those symbols were incorporated into each of the family lines that preceded them. So that's where a lot of this anti-Moorish thing really come from. Because like I said, most people never even really heard about who the Moors were like that outside of anything outside of what it is that they were told. And most of what they told came to them from somebody who was most likely taught to conceal the truth or whatever anyway. And as we said before, because of things like the Caledonium Gregorium, right, or the Caledonium Julianus, which led to the Intergravicissimus, all of this was ceremoniously set up to be revamped every 25. Well, it started every 25,000 years, and then they basically, that's how we started it, but they don't live that long, so they had to revamp it for them. So almost every 10 to 25 years, they'll remake or revamp the entire society, which is what they're trying to do right now. The problem is they can't get past a certain time in history. That's why, if you think about it, the time lock that exists with us right now is really between the 60s and 2000. Everything we're living right now is coming to us from what happened between, let's say, 1960 and 2000, and let's say 19. That's why they can't make nothing new. That's why they can't come up with any new IPs or anything like that. That's why they gotta try to radically change certain things, even though they know it's not gonna work and they're gonna lose money. They got to do it because they can't they can't create anything new after a certain point. You need people, you need human ingenuity, you need inspiration and shit like that to do that, to create these moves. And we don't have that in the society right now. Anytime we see something like a brother with a water power car, first thing I think of in my mind is like, why are you posting this online? They're gonna come get you. You know what I'm saying? Certain tech that I see certain people be making, like, don't even post this. Get this done on the low as much as you can outside the internet. So by the time it actually comes on the internet, you're already set. They can't do nothing to stop you with the shit. Keep everything as private as possible. They're going to say, oh, well, in this new society, privacy is something that you have to agree to get away with. No, I don't. That's commie talk. That's commie socialist gobbledygook. Only commies say that you can't have no fucking privacy. Oh, well, if you didn't have anything to hide, then see, all of that is double talk. I read about that shit in Orwell 1984. I already read that book. So unless you ban it, you shouldn't have done movies and shit on it, because I already know how y'all think with that. And all of that thought comes from shit like this. Jesuit plots against Britain from Queen Elizabeth to King George the Fifth. See what I'm saying? The intergravicissimus. Like this is real. This is what they're trying to do right now. Instead of calling it the intergravicissimus, though, they're gonna call it the Great Reset. It's the same bullshit. It's just them trying to come up with new ways to make people forget about the progress that we as a species have been making without them. Why do you think the Catholic Church, they came out with the motu proprio, but they never came back and specifically talked about paying back or what it is that they did to the Moors? How come no Moors have never sent them no inquiries or whatever in getting a mass apology from the pontiff for the destruction of the Moorish Empire or the fall of Granada or the breaking of the surrender of Granada? Because remember, there was no Spain in 1492. There was no Spain in 1491. The only thing that existed was the House of Aragon, the House of Castile, in which they purchased the idea of renting or annexing the Kingdom of Granada, which was just one of many, to what they were now calling the new reorganized Rome, aka Spain. Because we Moors, we the most belligerent. We were the last ones to go along with the revamp of all this shit. We're the last ones that got caught up in all of that garbage that they was doing. Like Perez ain't a Spanish name. Perez is a Moorish name. Perez is a Hebrew name. Just as an instant. So when you think of Moorish, you're also thinking of Mauritanian. You're also thinking Andalusian. You see what I'm saying? You're also thinking Valencian. We are already, we're in the place that everybody wants to go. Everybody says Africa is the place, and it is. It's the most resources or whatever, whoever you want. The most genetically diverse everything is in Africa right now. You want the tallest man, the shortest man, the whitest man, the darkest man. You understand? The woman with the biggest behind, the woman with the smallest behind, the person with the most deepest blue eyes, the person with the deepest black eye is all in Africa. It's a genetically diverse birthplace of a lot of stuff. However, we were here when that part of Africa that they call the West was a part of this part of Africa that they call the East, and vice versa. We were here for the whole thing, as they say. That's why from then to now, they all keep coming here, because this is the place to be. We're not going, well, we're not. The United States government is, but we're not. We're not going to these different people's countries, trying to destroy their countries and stuff like that. And even when the U.S. do it, they're doing it so that way they can keep the homogeneity that they have over that populace. They're not doing that to do anything for us because we don't get none of them benefits unless we government contractors. They found this allegedly in the Grand Canyon the other day. Yeah, all of this right here, these so-called canyons, this is all man-made rock. This is all building structures. These are all old buildings. You're looking at super old, super ancient ruins of demolished cities. But this right here in the middle of it. Look at all of the so-called Coptic, so-called Egyptian writing on it. This looked like a chimney. Here's another weird fact you may not know. Antarctica is listed as a desert. Did y'all know that? Yeah, it's a desert. It's what they got it listed at. Yeah, you got the Temple of Isis, you got the Temple of Zoroaster, you got the Temple of Set, all in the so-called Grand Canyon, right? Exactly. So that's where, like I said, a lot of the hate comes from, or a lot of the backlash that you get identifying with the Moorish paradigm is because of the fact, like I said, is that you're not subject to a lot of the stuff that they've given themselves over to, and that they can only represent and respect in secret. They can't do it publicly. Publicly, they put themselves in a foreign jurisdiction if they do that. Now, in the Clock of Destiny, there's a section in the Clock of Destiny, and it talks about the Moorish so-called Indian chiefs, or the Moorish chiefs, right? It speaks to all three of them. It talks of Moorish chief, tall man Dan. See how he in the red, white, and blue. I remember Dan, like Dapper Dan. Dan is one of the tribes that made up the Holy Roman Empire, who they refer to as the Danites, also the Danars, right? The Fomorians were Danites. So it talks about the Moorish chief, tall man Dan, Moorish chief, two guns, white calf, and the Moorish chief, black eagle. And that these were the Moors who were the last of the original Moorish forest cultures who had the original rights and all of that to the land or whatever, who low key hooked up with the last of the so-called Moors, as was written in the book Returning the Ancient One by the Empress Verides. So this is what all three of them look like. This is Tall Man Dan when he's receiving. He said that all of them were Shriners. And he said that this is him when he was basically working out the Indian Rights Act, which became the Civil Rights Act. And what is that on his chest? See that right there? Just how CMB said they would do. Yep, exactly. So after them, that's when they started bringing all of the white ones in and using them to create the pipeline to switch up whose nationality would be who for what. So that way the white Indians would be able to get what they needed.
Their hair was falling off. Too cold. I'm sorry. Let me get in the bed.
While to be able to now claim Indian descent through the $5 deal. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, let me pull this out for you too. Um, trying to find this one, John. Okay, yeah. So yeah, the first leader of the Native American Party was a Jewish dude named Louis Charles Levine, who was prominent from 1845 to 1860. This is what also led to the Civil War. The term Native American referred to pale European people with a relatively established history in the United States of America, as opposed to recent immigrants, see, who held a nativist point of view. Ironically, it did not refer to the actual first humans who settled the land, you see? That's what I mean about the language. So when they were saying that they were Native American, they're speaking of the nativist view of America, meaning that now that they have become native New Yorkers, right, they have a right to be and vote in the New York Republic, and that was never the case. Then, boom, in 1930, a photograph of two Canaanites, see, i.e., Hebrews, in Palestine before the genocide. These are the descendants of the Canaanites and the Philistines who are mentioned in the Bible. You see? Yet when you talk about free Palestine today or whatever, you only see pale Arabs. But at the time that it actually was Palestine, the only people who was living there was melanated people, was dark-skinned, thick, woolly-haired, melanated people who wore fezzes and turbans. After the issue was issued, the Decree of Granada was issued in 1609, fully 3 million, 3,300,000 and, excuse me, 3,500,000 Moors or Moriscos as their descendants. Between 1609 and 1610, over 1,000,000 Moriscos made their way to France, where they became known as Huguenots. See, it is in France where many of the last descendants of the Almoravid, right, the Almoravid dynasty settled. It was along with these that our Moorish ancestors made up the ranks and the peoples to today that we would call the so-called French Huguenots, as well as the original constituency of Charleston, North Carolina, because that's where they all went to. And then from there, another huge group moved up to Virginia. That's where Washington's family, George Washington and family come from. So that's why we don't call ourselves natives. You see what I'm saying? We don't have to be aboriginals because we were here as the originals. We could say originees, but we don't even got to be aboriginals because we was already here. We're the original originals. Everything that the Romans, aka the Spanish, held, they held because of the Moors. They didn't invent anything new. The Spanish didn't invent anything new. Nothing new they invented. Everything was just repurposed Moorish shit. And that's why everybody hated them. Because everything that they did, they took from these Moors. And these are the Moors who wiped out Rome. We wiped it out. The Holy Roman Empire only came into existence due to its relationship to the Moorish Empire. Because they were the only ones that we allowed to come back in. Whereas those lands that were given up, those Moors that chose to stay in those lands after they was abandoned by the Greater Moorish Empire, they were now left to their own devices and now would have to contend with whatever the law of the new tributary vassal estate was now running that place. Somebody sent me this on Facebook. Big up to my Facebook peoples. Morian. See? All the same. Morian, Morian. A headpiece of the 16th century introduced by the Spaniards who copied it from the Moors. You see? The Morian was worn as late as the reign of Charles I. So this was all Moorish shit that they was wearing. See? And this is how it's crazy how they write shit. A headpiece of the 16th century, comma, introduced by the Spaniards who had copied it from the Moors. So it was introduced by the Moors who had it then copied by the Spaniards, right? Right. From the 4th and the 5th of Philly of Mary, repealing all other acts respecting and keeping the armor of the horses. See? Then we come over here. What does it say? It is mentioned in the MS College of Arms, marked at M6, containing a copy of the ordinances that the joust royal peace at Windsor, 1466, as the weapons to be used on that occasion. The spike was introduced into France by the Switzers, another Moorish group, in the reign of Louis XI, being merely the lance or spear of the cavalry adapted to infantry. It soon became general in European armies. Moorish or long spikes, those copied from the Moors. You see? Everything these Europeans got, these West Asians got, they got it by copying us. You understand? So there are some people who believe that our history as Moors in America begin and end with the rise of the Prophet Noble Jew Ali. However, that's not true because Moors existed before him. What the Prophet did, though, was reunify the Moors and give the Moorish Americans their identity back that had been suppressed by people who were both Moors, dirty Moors, people who were of different nationalities, and most importantly, Freemasonic orders that were looking to keep the Moorish paradigm from reestablishing itself. Which is why, in establishing the slave system and making us believe that Hebrews started with Jews, and that these Jews, when all these Jews did was adopt the Moorish Hebrewism and adopted and repurposed the Moorish synagogues that had already been here, and they repurposed them and kicked those Moors out under the Negro Act, under the Act of 1871, under whatever ordinance, under the Jim Crow shit. This is how they was able to take over all of this stuff. So the first Zionist movement of so-called Jews was Moors in the 19s and the 20s. Get the book Golden 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler, and it tells you that the pogroms and that the Khazarians and them peoples was in at the time, those was all controlled by Frankists who were bringing the Khazarian peoples into Yehudism and all of that. But at the top of themselves, they were Frankists, which means that they were atheists and worse, idol worshippers, Satanists. So before there was the Zionist movement with Balfour, Lord Balfour, and all of these Ashkenazims and Charles Herschel and all of them, none of that existed before the Moors in Harlem or the Moorish Zionist Jews. Moors had their own Hebrew schools and stuff in the 20s, 30s, the 10s, right here. They never denied their Moorish heritage, just like the Moors never denied them. But all of that changed when they started bringing the Pan-Africans in it to culturally set trip on one another. The slave ship that exists that we were brought up on or brought into through the transatlantic, right? Trans meaning to change, Atlantic being the Atlantis, right? The only transatlantic slaves that were bought were those slaves that were brought on the transatlantic expressways, or what they call the Trans-Europe Express. That was brought all of the Circassian, Khazarian slaves that they was freeing up from those pogroms in Europe and bringing them over here to supplant and get rid of us. There's no way that the diagram of the slave ship is the very same diagram of the central nervous system, specifically of the female. So each one of these slaves represent a ganglion nerve, you understand? That's been whipped into submission to believe and cramped into this little bottom of this boat, this vessel. You see? To make you believe that this is all that is. Make us believe that we came over here and sent sardine cans and shit. So that way we intune that into the central nervous system, which governs the lower self, keep us in the lower chakra, so that way we don't access the true energy within the Kundalini Shakti of what they refer to as the Djed pillar. That's activated through DAF, right? Which is the internal dark solar plexus, or what they call the duat, that allows us to take control of the true vertebrae, which allows us to, again, both symbolically and metaphorically walk upright. See what I mean? So this doesn't, so you being a Moorish American doesn't negate you from being an American, or if you identify with Boricua, or you identify with whatever it is. It doesn't stop you. You don't. You can't be negated from being that, all because you're being this. Anybody who's promoting that are those people who need you to not have a nationality to stay on their level. But like I said, we're the only people that are urged that where we're born at is not where we're from. And to me, that's it's crazy. It's more than a conundrum. Like, it's crazy. Y'all pumping that shit like it makes sense. Like, it don't make sense. You don't do that to dark-skinned Indians. You don't do that to dark-skinned Africans. You don't do that to dark-skinned Panamanians. You're not doing none of that. You're not even doing that to the Haitians or the Jamaicans. And they down with the whole we was all slaves from Africa shit. They down with that. Everybody is down with that, except us now. And now we're a problem. Now that's a problem for them, because we're not buying that. That means we're not buying African supremacy over ourselves. And they promised them Africans that we would be under them. That's why they be so quick to talk about how we don't got no culture, and all while they trying to sell records to us. This is an old book I found, written in most parts Arabic, but there's some parts that's in Kufic, and it basically talks about how we basically horticultured the entire world. We changed the entire world's food supply. We switched up the whole planet's food supply during that millennial reign. Well, the first thing when it comes to your status and all of that is to understand that the majority of the stuff that you're seeing on the internet with this shit is not what they saying it is. A lot of it is coming from people who are taking aspects of it and striving to turn it into a stage or a platform for themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's never been about, I mean, it's about having your paperwork legit, but your paperwork should reflect what it is that you are establishing yourself in essence to be, not the other way around. Some people believe that you could just whip up some paperwork and then put it out there and then hand it to the people, and they be like, oh, okay, this is what it is. And then you ain't got to say nothing or do nothing. It's just, no, it's not. Life isn't like that. So why would this be? It's more about establishing what's best for yourself with the tools and the stuff that are available for you to do that. And if possible, linking up with a Moorish body, or a pseudo, or even betterly Moorish body slash community slash temple, that you can commune with other Moors that are striving to do the same thing. So we can go back to having economically viable municipalities and that type of shit again. How I do is build with whoever it is on their individual process individually, being that everybody unfortunately is in a different place when they come into this. I rarely meet people in one place at the same time when it comes to them now first activating all of this, which is why, I deal with that, like I said, individually. So anybody wants to move forward or hit me up on how to do that or whatever, you would hit me up directly at houseofbell@hotmail.com, and then, you know what I mean? We'll go through it as best as I know how. And then if you want to proceed, then we'll do that. But anything where you're sending just a bunch of money or paperwork or whatever into a bunch of different places of people you don't know, and then you got to get something back and then send it back to this person, and then this other person is going to witness it. If it sounds too complicated, then it's not real. Once you're doing it, once you're processing, going through your own process with it, you'll see the stuff that you're doing is kind of like a step-by-step thing. Unfortunately, you can't be out here just giving everybody every step, because then the next thing you know, you'll get a bunch of niggas with new websites trying to sell new processes and stuff, messing everything up before you get a chance to have yours rock. However, just because certain Moors are doing that, that don't mean that's what all Moors or all Moorish science is about. It's just that in this society, they tend to only get you to focus on the negative one, because the greasy wheel get the most oil. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so we would deal with that, you know what I mean, directly if you want to do that. But for the most part, it starts with the Declaration of Nationality and then building up everything from there. Yeah, all of these European nations are all of those so-called Hebrews that once they scattered, right, went into their own dominions, they formed their own kingdoms the way that they had been doing from the times of, even before what they call the times of Canaan and all of that. So all of those coats of arms, especially, that's what made the Europeans, Moors, or the European melanated people, so distinct, because they themselves were descended from those Hebrews that after the fall of Jerusalem started going to the different parts of the world to establish their new kingdoms. Like it says in the Circle 7 Quran, after the fall or whatever, the Moors asked the permission from the pharaohs of Egypt. And remember, the pharaohs of Egypt were the ones that essentially let the Hebrews out of their dominions in the first place. Because all the Hebrews at that time were those Moors, were those Canaanite clans or tribes that had been mixed up with each other. Then through Abraham, they adopted the Canaanite culture And then Abraham came, or the one that they're referring to as Abraham came and redistributed how the culture was going to be interpreted. So if you were speaking ancient Hebrew and ancient Canaanite, it would be like the same thing. It would be like somebody speaking English in America versus somebody speaking English from England. It's the same language, but you could tell that there's a different inflections and shit like that. Same thing. If I'm speaking slang here in America, in New York, is different than the slang that they speak in LA, but in California, but we can still communicate. It was the same thing. Principal said, who was the member in your family that took you by surprise of being in opposition to Moorish paradigm? The whole family. It was really when I came home wearing the fez and my grandmother was like, oh, you a Moor now? That's what blew my mind. Because it was like, damn, so you grew up with all of it. Like you knew real Moors from the real temple, the first temple and shit. And yet still you raising us, you know, Southern Baptists. Like, what are you doing? Like what are we doing out here? But the suppression of your Moorish identity begins at home, unless you're also a type of Moor who is coming from a family of Moors, and because you never had to really fight for your nationality, you didn't have to go declare it. You was born with it. You just take it for granted. That's the other side of the game with Moors too. You have certain Moors who grew up in Moorish families, successful Moorish families and all of that, but they don't have the same verb for declaring because they was born with the Il or Bay at the end of their name. They never had to go do an actual declaration and things like that. You understand? So it kind of cuts both ways. That's why, again, we have European names today because they were the ones that married back into the family on this side. You see? So when I say that the old European black nobility was Moors or Moorish, and I say that the Asians were technically Moorish, I'm speaking from the perspective of I'm using Moorish in the context of saying melanated without saying black, right? However, they weren't necessarily Moorish in the context of how they were living. Like I said, culturally. In that instance, a lot of them were living behind Moors. You understand? Because they weren't dealing with science and shit like that. They were dealing with the whatever repressive religious style government that they was using to control the people, which is usually coming from the Romans side of things. You understand? So like the Holy Roman Empire, they were Moorish in the context that they were melanated. However, in their practice, they would be considered Roman Christian. You see what I'm saying? But in terms of them being Moors, I'm saying when I use it in that context, I'm talking about them in terms of their nationality, their pigment. All right. I'm trying to see. But yeah, all of these European monarchs, Asian monarchs, all of them was melanated. Like I showed here, Sake Dean Mohammed, aka George the Third. There's him with the turban on. There's the family. Then this is also an old quote. From King George the Third speaking to the Sultan. That Suleiman, forever servant of God, commander of the faithful, Muhammad upheld the support for the grace of God, right? The Sultan of Muhammad, son of Abdullah, son of Ishmael, prince of the house of dynasty of Hassan, right? This ties now directly to America, because remember the whole treaty peace of friendship was signed in the year of Hassan. Hassan, who has ever upheld the power of God, Sultan of Fez, Morocco with an A, and Sus, the Draha, the Taflet, and the Tuat, together with all the territories of the West, i.e. America. To our dearly beloved, treasured, exalted power of God, who, Sultan George III, Sultan of the territories of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Ireland, Duke of Mecklenburg, Sterlitz, Prince descended from the dynasty of the Sultans of Rome and Palestine. Okay? So, when we ever heard King George referred to as a sultan? See what I'm saying? So the Sultan of the West and the territories of the West and the Sultan of Fez of Morocco is sending a correspondence now to the Sultan of Rome, aka Europe, aka Britain. So you see what I mean? You can get the book Nature Knows No Color Line for this, for breakdown more of this picture. Yeah. So there was a Sultan of Rome and Palestine who was George himself. This is who they saying that George was that. And I'm telling you also, Sake Dean Mohammed, aka George III, is the first one to bring bathhouses and shit to Europe, to Europa. This then is shattering the myth of that being a totally Christian kingdom. See what I mean? It was Christian in the sense that there were Christians in it, and that was the language of the religious aspect of it. However, the rulership, George and them, James and them, they weren't, you know what I mean? They was actually Hebrews. So that brought them into the Moorish paradigm within itself, and they ruled over the Christian nation. You know? Anybody have any questions? Daniel said, you mentioned the Council of Nicaea in the last few slides. Have you heard of the Codex 1970, matriarchal apartheid? I've been searching for info there, censoring heavily. Yeah, that book, they've been low-key suppressing that for a while. There's another book similar to that called The Sibyls, Sylbils, about the matriarchal gods that they was allegedly trying to suppress and all of that. But even with that, a lot of that ain't what it seemed either, because a lot of these so-called goddesses and stuff that they allegedly were suppressing, they were suppressing because they was sacrificing children to them. Semiramis and Minerva and Hecate and all of the rest of them, they was getting a lot of blood from their devotees under these so-called matriarchal systems, so much so that the systems themselves weren't sustainable, because you can't have a situation where the woman is God but then requires the edification through what makes her a goddess, right? Which is her womb. So you're worshiping her for being able to produce the life, but then you're sacrificing the lives that she produces to her. You see? And this is where a lot of the political infighting happened between us as people, because we wasn't with none of that. A lot of us wasn't with any of that. Yes, Leo Couture was a student of another Moor named Bookman. And Bookman was a traditional Moor in the context that he actually wore fezzes and all of that. And Bookman used to teach the so-called enslaved Haitians how to read. And he was teaching them how to read with or through the Quran. So allegedly, when they found him with the Quran, the type of one that he had like raised letters and all that. So they stole it, they took it from him, and then tried to throw him in the fire, wrapped it to his body and threw him in the fire with it. And the pages allegedly burnt onto his body. After they burnt off to his body and he survived through the fire, after he healed, he was able to use the etchings on his body as the way of reading and teaching them the alphabet. This is also why they want the Haitians to be totally into just being Haitian and not getting into the Moorish connection to Haiti. And then that brought a lot of other Moors into context too, that was down with Toussaint. Moors like Mackendall, you know, who was the heavy poisoner out there. Mackendall killed so many French with poison that they named poison after him. If you go to Haiti right now and say you need some Mackendall for something, people are gonna be like, well, who you trying to poison? Who you trying to kill? That's how much work this nigga put in with the poison. And all of that again came from the Moors. But Bookman being the premier one, he started with that. Case in point, Frank, the name given by the Turks and other Asiatics to all Europeans. See that? So we Moors and Turks called all Europeans Franks because they came from the lingua franca, from the Franca lingua language base. Yes, like the Planned Parenthood shit. That's why they all worship Molech and all of that. So see that? The indigenes used flags of various colors. Thus, in his report to the French Directory, dated November 12, 1799, Toussaint L'Ouverture describes the flag he used for his vessels as being white with the head of a black man in the center. So one, what this shows is what they don't talk about is that Toussaint was an admiral and he had people in he had a navy, and that navy had a flag, and the flag of that navy was a white flag with a black man's head in the middle. That flag was adopted by the Corsican Napoleon, and then that became the flag of Corsica. Islam. The original flag of Haiti had an original man's head in it, and it was red, white, and blue. Haiti also had an imperial flag with the orchid in the middle of it, because Haiti was the nation that worked to free all of the nations under subjugation in the Western Hemisphere. Exactly. And an admiral, right, which is Moorish, is that. Yes, indeed. It was red, white, and blue, just like this, with the Moor's head in the middle. Then the ensign for the flags that they would fly on the vessels, because he had a navy too, but they don't talk about that. They had the so-called Corsican flag for that. But it says here, hence the term lingua franca applied to all barbarous dialects spoken off the coast of the Levant, composed of a mixture of Italian, French, Greek, Spanish, and Moorish. So yeah, they don't want to really get into that element of the Haitian people, because then, then they got to get into why, they sacrificed the Saunier, and why Christophe was trying to link back up with the French and all of this BS. Because the same boule sellout niggas that was selling us out, doing all of that then, is the same ones today doing the same thing. It don't change. They don't give up. They just wait a generation and then come in under a new fake name. But the mission is always the same. Take what you got. Stop the Moors from coming up. Like, that's it. You know what I'm saying? Anybody else? Exactly. Yeah, but they don't get into the fact that he had an army. They don't get into the fact that all of the coats of arms of the so-called Spanish, South American nations all got fezzes at the top of the finial, showing where their allegiance lies, and the fact that they all owe Haiti, because it was the Grand Navy of the Haitian Empire that did what they did. Then the coup de grace was going to come in with the Saunier, and then they betrayed him, and then they've been cursed ever since, because he wasn't giving them crackers no quarter. His flag, the flag that he instituted, the black and the red flag, that was it. That was the no quarter flag. The Roman Catholic came into South America through Charles after the Inca Empire fell, after Charles came in, and they switched it up on them, and then they wound up, decimating them. And then the Roman Catholics came in, and then basically just dumbed everything up from there. Yup. Again, it took the communists. It took Hugo Chavez, the communist, and then look what they did to him. Gave that nigga cancer. And now all them Venezuelan gangs and everything, they here, militarized, coked up, hopped up, and now they trying to take over all of the gangs in America. It's all a scam, yo. Yeah, now they bring it, and they trying to bring them all up here. It's in the Venezuelan gangs got guns and shit, taking over whole apartment complexes in LA. But they can only really do that in blue states right now. In Colorado, excuse me. Yeah. Inshallah, like I said, their plan will be slowed down if this dude get in there, get slowed down for a couple of years, give us some breathing room to finish up what we gotta do before this whole thing actually collapses. But they can't collapse it and keep control at the same time. Remember that. Too much shit is gonna come undone, and they don't have the right probability matrix to absorb anything that may go south for making them type of moves on people. So they would rather incite the people to destroy their own situation than for them to come in and actually do it themselves. Because everybody that don't like them is going to click up against them. That's just facts. That's just what's going to happen. They don't have no contingency against that. Anybody else? Cornel West is just another Negro married to a light-skinned, ambiguous, big-faced chick who is basically another step and fetch it Negro who ain't gonna do nothing but keep niggas thinking about pork chops and shit for the next 50 years, giving him. So him and Jesse Jackson and all them niggas, they on their way out. The new ones you got to worry about, like I said, is the new slaves, they replacements. The Jamal Hills, the Tamron Halls, the you know what I mean? Tiffany Haynards, these types of chicks, these types of people, because they use a majority of females. The males, the only males they're going to use is like homosexuals and compromised dudes. So you ain't going to look at them as men anyway. So that don't matter. The ones you got to look out for is the ones that they always put on the pedestals, and that's usually again the melanated woman, because they know that so long as they go after her with her ego, she'll give up her man, she'll give up her child, she'll give up her family. See? That's why they love Kamala, because she's totally tied to the game. She don't got no children. She don't care about nothing. She don't care about nothing or nobody other than what these niggas want to put in her back to get her to do. Yeah, that's the only people they'll bring up. That's why they hate it. That's why they hate Drumpf. That's why they hate Drumpf, because he ain't never really do nothing to shit on niggas, man. This is the nigga who paid for Jesse Jackson to run for president. This is who y'all saying is racist? That's racist, right? But Jay-Z ain't racist. Right? Puffy ain't racist though, right? Right? But the nigga who paid for Jesse Jackson and all of these other niggas that go to school, the nigga who never jerked Mike Tyson in any boxing match, nothing. He's the racist one, right? Get out of here, man. Anybody else? They be tripping, B. They be straight lying about shit. They be acting like they ain't doing that. Back when in the movie Gangs of New York, they talked about Tammany Hall. This is what used to be on the top of Tammany Hall. It's now called the New York Film Academy building, but this is still there all these years later. And Tammany Hall, that's how they used to run New York. Used to run it all through Tammany Hall, through the Shriners that took it over. But yeah, this is what they had to wear to be up in there. So, anybody else have any questions? Okay, so again, thank you guys for coming through. You can definitely go check out www.aseer.com. All of my links, current links and everything is up there. You can also subscribe to the app. Do that, which is again the ADOT app. Please definitely check that out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please also check out www.cordobaorganics.com. Definitely appreciate that. Reginald said, can you speak about the original Choctaw in Tennessee? Yeah, they were the majority group out there. They were also connected to the Mississippian cultures, the old so-called Mississippian cultures that when you read about the Prophet Noble Jali in the Circle 7 Quran, he said when a European got here, he found Moors living up and down the Mississippi. So those Choctaws, aka Chickasaws, they basically had their own confederacy out there, and they were in a confederacy, early confederacy with the Choctaw, aka the Choctaw, the Muskogee, which is the Muskogees, and another group of Creeks. But that all went south after the Indian Wars after the war started. And so they kind of isolated themselves up until like the American so-called Civil War. And then that's when they all got broke down. But Kelly is seen cool, man. He been dropping shit, letting everybody know that all of the gang members that he kicked out of his country, all of them niggas, they done keep your so-called president and allow all of them to come up here. So at least he keeping it real. He also kept it real and said how governments print money, and that they only do that to fool people into thinking that they need to still pay taxes. So he definitely dropping the shit out the bag. And for what I'm hearing, El Salvador is like a goddamn paradise right now. So he definitely doing something right. But I mean, if you want to clean up your crib by dumping all your garbage in your neighbor's house, then and the neighbor letting you do it, you gotta go with what you gotta go with. So definitely please check out the ADOT app if you haven't subscribed already. And definitely check out www.cordobaorganics.com. Also, I'm going to have the DOS Gold 418 website, the DS418 website actually up and running, where I can show you a preview of the new books and all of the stuff I'm doing with that. And any kids any children or heirs that are into, story writing and, alternatives to the Marvel and DC and all of that paradigm, I'm going to have all of that type of stuff on there. So that way I can get that going and start to put all of this knowledge into the real the real tools of war, which is today are TV shows, movies, comic books, magazines. Like that's where the war for the mind is being fought. That's why they want to use that and make people believe that all the AI manipulating images that they using to make this chick popular, like it's really her. Like people really stumble for her like that, and that's not the case. You know, and hopefully, enough people wake up to that fact and don't get caught up in more hype and act like this ain't been the same chick that's been there and doing everything now. Yes, Danielle, I'm working on doing a video game or animated movie or a TV show, as well as like toys that come in books that everybody will be able to go through and get and hold on, you know. Yeah, there are more pyramids in America than anywhere else on the planet. That's just facts. And they're older than all of the other ones on the planet. So we where we need to be. So again, thank you guys for coming through. Thank you guys for sending the $30 to Cash App via money sign capital DS418.com or through PayPal to dukeoftears@gmail.com. I very much appreciate it. It definitely helps keep this stuff going. And I'm thinking about doing a Kickstarter for them, but I might just have that whole component go through my website because I'm trying to deal with the outside platforms as least as possible. So I definitely appreciate the support, guys. And again, anybody wants to hit me up about the individual process or anything like that, hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. All right. And again, I really appreciate you guys. And definitely stay vigilant, stay awake. Procunium a Procunium laudibus, nobilis, pax et amor. Long live the empire. And inshallah, we get up with you guys next week. Thank you all for the participation. I really appreciate it. Pax et amor, nobilis.
Islam. Thank you, brother.